Hey guys, Ron here. I've done this vlog before, but I want to do it again. I don't even know if I'll keep the other one because I want to be really more inclusive this time. How's that? Yeah, I'm having well, I was wearing the hat because I'm having a bad hair day. Um, but if it looks too funny, I don't care. Look, I'm advertising Seal Beach. That's a little town between Huntington Beach and Long Beach, right on the Pacific Coast Highway, or right on the ocean, I should say. And it's a beautiful little town. I love going down there. It's, I don't know, 50 miles south of Los Angeles. Anyway, today I'm doing Marilyn Monroe's house again. The house where she lived and died in. Whatever, I'll just have a bad hair day. Now I have hat hair. Come here, you. Walking the little guy again, and he goes where he wants to go. Anyway, I figured this time I'm going to experiment a little bit. I'm going to start out at the location, and then we'll talk a little more about the subject at hand. This house and the house across really fascinates me. Here's the gate. Here's the gate in front of the house that Marilyn Monroe lived and died in. And the house has been redone I don't know how many times since 1962. Still have mail there. Look at that, unattended mail. Oh, should get a locking mailbox. You can see the top of the house there. I've actually been in this house twice. Once they had an art sale, and once it was an open house when it was for sale. And it has, a yard in front, the pool in back. There's an inscription by the pool in the back, which was put in before Marilyn lived there, and it says Cursum Perficio. I'm probably mispronouncing that, it's Latin, but it means I'm completing my journey. Wasn't that ironic and fateful? So here's the fence. Here's the home. I'm sorry, I apologize. That's the next home. Here's the fence. I want you to look at this home too. This home is interesting, and not many people point it out. This is the home right across the way. Now again, everything I talk about, a lot of what I talk about today is alleged, but allegedly in this home here up there on the second floor, the occupant of the house, the lady of the house, would have card games or bridge games, some kind of games she'd have with her lady friends in that summer of 1962. And she, at least one interviewer claims that she said that she could see Robert Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, coming here across the way to the Marilyn Monroe house. Oh, look, there's Bobby Kennedy again, Attorney General. I mean, they must have thought it was pretty strange, right? But at the time, this was not the time of the internet. This was not the time of social media. This was not the time of selfies or cell phones. And pre-Watergate, which was 1974, for those of you who don't know, people trusted in their government. People were patriotic post-World War II Americans, trusted in the government, and would never even think that the government was doing anything fishy or would lie to them or anything of that matter. Little did they know. And that also extended to government officials like Robert Kennedy. I mean, even if you were a Republican, what's ironic was President Jack Kennedy would be considered a Republican today with his political views, but that's today. Then he was a moderate Democrat. But even Republicans then, the opponents of President Kennedy, people didn't get out and march in the streets, and even over the beginnings of Vietnam, they trusted, and there was a respect for the presidency, and there was a respect for, I can't handle it, there was a respect for public office, including the Attorney General, which was the president's brother, Robert Kennedy. Anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about a subject that I could talk about for like 5 hours, but I've talked about it before. But let's talk about the alleged circumstances concerning Marilyn's death and her involvement with the Kennedy brothers. So Marilyn Monroe had met Jack Kennedy, I believe, even before, and I may be wrong about this, I believe it was when he was a senator, may have even been a congressman. In fact, supposedly Jack Kennedy, on one of his times, he was convalescing from now what we know as Addison's disease, which he had all his life, but then the public was told he has a terrible back, which he did. Jack Kennedy, in his youth, so I guess it must have been post-1950, because Marilyn wasn't really famous till maybe the late 40s, early 50s. He had a poster of Marilyn against his wall, over his bed, turned upside down. Now, its significance is for you to decide, but he already was aware of her, and obviously she was a conquest, probably, that he wanted. Now, it's pretty well documented that President Kennedy had affairs when he was married. Jackie Kennedy had affairs when she was married to him. Not everybody knows that, but if you do the research, you'll find it out. Anyway, um, so at some point during John F. Kennedy's presidency, he becomes reacquainted with Marilyn Monroe, and allegedly they begin an affair. An affair that she kind of complains about as far as his sexual prowess, but you know, she wasn't about to turn down the President of the United States. So Marilyn, again, allegedly is having this affair with President Kennedy, one of many, many, many affairs for Jack Kennedy. And by this time, Marilyn, all right, can't handle it, back and forth, back and forth. Marilyn was single. She was divorced from her last husband, or what became her last husband, Arthur Miller. She engages in an affair with the President of the United States. Now, apparently Marilyn took this affair much more, I mean, infinitely, no comparison. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, Jack Kennedy took the seriousness of it at, 0.00010, and Marilyn was, I think, a 10 out of 10. And apparently she had some delusion that John Kennedy the President of the United States, may leave his wife, abandon his children, and marry Jackie while he was still president, and she could become First Lady. Okay, so in talking about this with friends, they said, you're only going to end up getting hurt. Well, she continues to call the president's switchboard. The president's secretary is a woman named Evelyn Lincoln. Eventually, Jack Kennedy is told by his father, Ambassador Joe Kennedy, there's a photograph mistakenly in the middle of there, his brother, Jack Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, probably his mother, his inner circle, that the affair with Marilyn Monroe, and again, this is all alleged, is too dangerous. Political football, just too dangerous. Great liability. So he sends his fixer, Bobby Kennedy, who had also met Marilyn briefly, to end it. Marilyn got to stop. And Bobby Kennedy, apparently then he gets involved with Marilyn. And apparently this affair with Robert Kennedy is much deeper than the one with Jack Kennedy as far as Marilyn's concerned. She calls, and again, these are through countless interviews with Marilyn's friends and associates. She calls Bobby my little love, and one of the things that isn't always written about was that apparently one of the reasons she had such deep feelings for Robert Kennedy was that he was one of the few men who could satisfy her sexually. She had, according to doctors, primary frigidity, which you can look up, means she just couldn't have sexual satisfaction. And apparently Bobby rang her bell, floated her boat, set those fireworks in motion, rocked her world. Jack Kennedy didn't. I'll bet that Joe DiMaggio did, but Arthur Miller certainly didn't. But apparently Bobby was one of the few who did. So between that and him, being considerate, kind, and listening to her, so on and so forth, apparently this was an affair of some importance to her, of great importance. And once again, she told friends and associates that she wanted to marry Bobby. He had 9 children he would have had to abandon, plus leaving his wife, knowing that Bobby was going to run for president, probably right after Jack Kennedy's second term, if he were to have been elected in 1964. So in 1968, that Bobby would run, but she still wanted to marry him. So this, again, huge liability. And Bobby was even more careless than John Kennedy. It was supposedly an open secret, even more of an open secret in Hollywood, that Marilyn was having an affair with Bobby Kennedy. In fact, Hedda Hopper, all of them, the gossip columnists were already referring to Marilyn having relationships with men in the highest levels of government. And here's what really gets me. Maryland's psychiatrist, Dr. Greenson. Robert Greenson? God, how can I forget Greenson's name all of a sudden? But Dr. Greenson was the closest of intimates with Marilyn, maybe even sexually. There's theory that she kept wanting to have sex with Dr. Greenson, and he finally broke down and did it. And of course, then there was more blackmail, potentially against Greenson. Greenson said in a taped interview, which I have listened to many times, interviewed by one of Marilyn's, I believe Marilyn's second husband, Robert Slater, who has also spent his life, the rest of his life, in large part investigating the death of Marilyn Monroe. He has Greenson on tape, the psychiatrist who was also there, called to the house after Marilyn died, and she was seeing like 7 days a week in therapy. Couldn't have been closer than Ralph Greenson, to Marilyn. And Greenson says, look, if you want to know what's going on, ask Bobby Kennedy. And he's on tape saying that. Personally, I believe there was an affair with Bobby Kennedy, and I believe that Bobby Kennedy, Attorney General, brother of the President of the United States, second most powerful person in the country, thus the world, realizes he's got a huge political liability. Because at some point, Bobby says, we've got to end the affair. He uses Peter Lawford, which is another long story, the poor Peter Lawford. And I've got a vlog on him as well, and his house. If you want to look at my channel, I explain his connection too with Marilyn. Peter Lawford's got to get in there. You got to help me end it with Marilyn. Marilyn's phone lines, access is cut off. At the same time with all this, Marilyn seems to be going into a paranoia. She believes her calls are tapped. And actually, you know what? She was right. So when they checked out and dismantled the house afterwards for reconstruction, they found all kinds of layers of wires. She was being bugged, probably by the FBI, Justice Department, Mafia, Republicans. Anybody who could get dirt on her affair with the Kennedys was considered fair game. So, I know this is sounding like more and more of a conspiracy theory, but Marilyn did not take the breakup with Bobby Kennedy well at all. In fact, it was so bad that, and she told this to numerous associates, including Bob Slater, Jeannie Carmen, Natalie Trundy was the wife of, or at that time the girlfriend became the wife of Arthur Jacobs, press agent at 20th Century Fox, Pat Newcomb, that Marilyn, was going to hold a press conference on Monday morning, and she says, I'm going to do it. Press conference. This is after she'd been fired from Something's Gotta Give, but had been reinstated, and she was going to start shooting again. She said she was going to hold a press conference. She had the phrase that a lot of people use, that Marilyn used, and they all say this, is that Marilyn said, quote unquote, I'm being, quote, treated like a piece of meat between brothers, unquote, being tossed around like a piece of meat. And again, numerous people said that, unaffiliated with each other. So apparently that was a phrase that Marilyn liked to use a lot. So the press conference Monday morning never came. She was told it would be very dangerous. And on Friday night, suddenly she's dead. We know that supposedly it was an overdose of sleeping pills, although there were none in the stomach, found in the stomach contents or in the digestive tract. I'm not sure, but it's one or the other that was mysterious. Supposedly they searched the body for needle marks or injections, even between the toes. They couldn't find anything. It was very mysterious. There was no drinking vessel. There was no glass of water found at the scene. So, how did she take the pills? It was all very mysterious. Peter Lawford supposedly was there that night, called to cover up. We all have our beliefs on what happened. I do not believe it was an intentional overdose, that it was suicide. I don't believe that at all. I believe it was possibly accidental overdose, or something much more nefarious. But so many people came out in the decades afterwards, and the real shame is that at the time of this filming, they're all either dead or near death, probably all dead by now. Also in the immediate aftermath, Pat Newcomb. Pat Newcomb was a very close friend of Marilyn's, from the studio, from 20th Century Fox, her publicity person. She was there that night. We know she was there that night because she was there when the ambulance got there. And supposedly she was the woman screaming in the street, you killed her, you did it, you finally killed her. Anyway, what happens to Pat Newcomb? Well, suddenly she starts working for the Kennedys. She's also sent on various trips overseas for months at a time. Now, why does Pat Newcomb, who works for 20th Century Fox, why does she suddenly become employed by the Kennedys? Up until the 2000s, she never had a good answer for this, but was questioned about it routinely. Of course, she swears there's no cover-up, there's no coincidence. It's coincidence. She said she became friendly with Pat Lawford, who was Peter Lawford's wife, who was President Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy's sister, and that's how she got in with the Kennedys. But, they must have really liked her to give her such a big job. Arthur Jacobs, he handled press and publicity too. It seems he was rewarded by 20th Century Fox too for keeping secrets, because Arthur Jacobs, 6 years later, becomes a producer. Well, actually, before that, becomes a producer. And what did he produce? Planet of the Apes franchise. Made millions and millions and zillions of dollars off that. His life certainly got better. Ralph Greenson spent basically the rest of his life defending the fact and claiming he didn't sleep with Marilyn, his patient. He didn't participate in a conspiracy. He doesn't know anything about the Kennedys or the Mafia killing Marilyn. He suspects it was suicide. But he believed that his reputation was ruined forever. And I don't know, I'll have to research, if his practice and if his books selling and everything else ever fully recovered. Eunice Murray. Now, who's Eunice Murray? She was the one who supposedly found Marilyn and reported her dead. Eunice Murray, as far as Marilyn knew, was a housekeeper referred by Dr. Greenson. As a matter of fact, at past midnight, when the police arrive, Marilyn's laying near death in the bed, or dead, and Eunice Murray's doing laundry. Kind of weird, don't you think? Well, Eunice Murray happened to be a psychiatric nurse, basically sent to live with Marilyn, unbeknownst to her, by Dr. Greenson to watch over her. Eunice Murray is suddenly rewarded by taking dozens of, I don't know if it's dozens, but several overseas trips. She was kept out of the public eye for years after 1962. For years. Sent overseas. Who's paying for it? She certainly didn't have the money for it herself. Well, why is she traveling so much? In 1985, and if you can find this, I have it too. 1985, Eunice Murray, the housekeeper, the psychiatric nurse / Marilyn's housekeeper that found her, said on camera to Anthony Summers, who wrote the book Goddess about Marilyn Monroe. It was a documentary that they had a hard time finding a distributor in America. It was called, I believe, Say Goodbye to the President. See if you can find it on YouTube. Eunice Murray, who by then was in her 80s or early 90s, she says, absolutely unequivocally, and I have it on, I've seen it, I had the videotape of it, the DVD, you can find it on YouTube. She says, absolutely, Robert Kennedy was there that day. The day she died, he was frantically searching for a diary that Marilyn was keeping, in which she kept state secrets that Bobby Kennedy was telling her. They were arguing. Lawford was there. And afterwards, and she also says Marilyn was alive when the ambulance arrived. And after that, Marilyn said, I never should have talked to the BBC, meaning that documentary, that Say Goodbye to the President documentary of Anthony Summers. They all profited or lost after the death of Marilyn. And it's said by a guy named Mickey Song, who was hairdresser to first Marilyn and then the Kennedys to some degree. He said once after Marilyn's death, he mentioned being around the Kennedys. He said, you know who I miss? Marilyn. He said the whole room fell silent. They all looked at him like he had said something satanic and forbidden to speak about. And he knew he should shut up about that subject. So anyway, folks, as I said, there's a lot I could talk about with this subject, but I could go on for another few hours. Anyway, forgive the bad hair and the hat hair. I think I'm going to sign off now. Again, my name is Ron, and if you enjoy my channel, and I have a lot to say, don't I? Please give me likes. I would really appreciate it. I don't do this for monetary gain, not at this point anyway. We'll see what the future holds. I just do this because I love showing my town to you and exploring different things that have happened here. But YouTube definitely likes, I should say. Oh, coming up on some people here, so let's take a little pause for a second here. Be right back with you. Okay, folks, so as I was saying, please subscribe if you like the content. If you do subscribe, hit the little bell icon next to the subscribe button. Then you'll be notified as when I post, which is often. Okay, folks, hope everyone is well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.